So the next thing we're going to look at is how to build furniture for the finished color model. There are many different ways that you can approach this in model building, and the method that we're going to look at is what I refer to as the 2D method. So as opposed to actually building a couch three-dimensionally, cutting a ton of tiny separate pieces and gluing them together to form some sort of 3D form. Instead, we're going to think about this more of in a picture sort of form. Kind of the way that this makes me feel. This feels very flat and 2D and like a picture. So instead of, making something three-dimensional, what we're going to do is we're going to draw it in scale and make it stand up. Okay, this is the simplest way to approach furniture in model building, and I think it's a really good place to start for beginners. So the piece of furniture that I want to make for my example is a love seat. So the first thing that I did was I did a little bit of research. I went onto Google and I Googled love seat dimensions, and I looked on Google Images and I found some good images of love seats that had the different dimensions labeled and are a good reference point for me to draw and also use to make sure that everything is in scale. So I went ahead and I jotted down the height and the width of the love seat that I like. So I'm going to grab my scale ruler. I'm going to find the 1/4 inch side, and on my watercolor paper, which I think is a nice material for this, you also could use your crescent board or the illustration board, the stuff that's a little thicker that says crescent on the back. You also could use this. The love seat has some curves. It's kind of a curvy piece of furniture, so for that reason I think I'm going to go with the thinner material because it will be easier to cut through. So first thing I want to do is I want to measure out the width of my love seat, which is going to be 70 inches or 5 feet 10 inches in scale. So I'm going to mark out 5 feet and 10 inches. And the height is 38 inches, which is about 3 feet 2 inches. Just like so. And I'm just going to draw a very light box. Like some guidelines, just to kind of draw like my box that's encompassing the shape. That kind of helps me a little bit. So that's the overall shape. And the next thing that I want to look at is it's a love seat, right? So the other dimension that's important is where does the actual seat happen? Where does that fall? So standard seat height is 18 inches. So I'm going to measure out 18 inches, which is 1 foot 6 inches. I'm going to mark that. Mark that. So now we have another guideline that we can lay down. Very lightly, and now this is already starting to look more like a couch to me. So now I'm going to look back at the photo that I've pulled as a reference point, and I'm going to sketch this love seat out. So draw that down there. Gonna have this come up really big and tall. And I would start personally by doing this in pencil, how I'm doing it now. And then I would come in and, if I were you, and then add in some color, some colored pencil, etc. There are 2 seats on love seat, so I'm going to draw those 2 seats like so, and now I'm just going to deal with the back. Like so. And, oh, yes, I wanted to do that. Okay. There's our love seat. So, like I said, I would now go in and do this in color for your final color model. So I would say I would want this to be an orange couch personally. So I would go in there and either paint that or color that with colored pencil. If you're going to paint it, I would do that before you cut it out. It's just easier because you have like the paper to hold on to, you know what I mean? And you can do like a nice wash and then just cut it out. It's nice in the color model too to use some pen. So after I would have painted this, I would have liked to then use a pen to kind of make some details pop over the color. Just looks nice. Anyway, after that, I'm gonna cut it out. So going to start with the outline, and I often like to do this. I'm just gonna chop this piece off so I'm not having to move this big piece of paper around, and I can kind of just navigate this a little easier. So I'm just tracing the edge with my X-Acto, like so, and I'm flipping it around. And getting getting comfortable with the X-Acto, it just takes practice and time to figure out, what's the most comfortable way for you to hold it. Everyone is different. Everyone that I've ever worked with does these things slightly differently. So it's great because you get to learn so many different ways of approaching this stuff from so many different people. So now I'm just going to trim this up a little bit. It's looking a little wonky to me. Gonna go back in with my X-Acto. Now, one other thing I want to do that I think will make this look quite nice is, see at the bottom here, I have these like feet, these little feet. I want my feet to stick out, so I'm going to go in there and cut those out. This is a really satisfying thing to do if you're gonna do like some chairs with some taller legs, to actually cut that out. Can look really nice. And now we have a little chair that makes sense in our room with our door, right? And again, we face the dilemma of how do we make this stand up straight. I think for the furniture, as opposed to using a big heavy jack like I recommend with the walls, I think it's better to do something that's a little more in line with what we've done for our figures, which is just taking a tab of that watercolor paper, that thinner material, and attaching it to the bottom. And again, I always recommend making this tab right here the color of the floor. So in my design, if my floor is black, I want to actually make this tab black. because then it will disappear onto my black floor, right? And so the easiest way to do this is before you actually give the tab, right? So I'm going to just color this in black here. Also, guys, do your best to, you know, not get paint or glue or marker all over these cutting mats. That stuff really deteriorates these very quickly, and they are quite expensive. And the school has a nice supply of them, so we should try to keep them good. So whenever I'm doing stuff like this, I just lay, you know, a scrap piece under so that all of those lines end up on here and don't ruin our nice cutting mat. So now that this is the color of our floor, I'm going to cut out a base for our, and you should always use, you might have seen me freehand a couple of times now, but you should always be using your metal ruler for protection of your fingers as well when you're trying to do those straight lines. And now, same as our figure, to attach this to this, I want to use the dip method. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue on a scrap piece, and I'm going to dip the legs of my couch into that glob of glue, both sides, and I'm just going to press it right on to my little tab. And don't press down too hard or you will like bend the legs, you know, you'll smush it because this isn't super strong material. And that is a couch. And see what I mean about making it the color of your floor? So if my floor is black, see how that disappears on the floor when I make that black, and it really looks two-dimensional and nice and like right? Like, doesn't that look great and lovely? As opposed to this person who has the white base and is really popping off of the floor. So that's good. And let's say that when you're making your rough model, you don't know what color your floor is going to be yet. You haven't decided that. You know, you can always, this is the wonderful thing about model making. Like, if I've decided, okay, I need a new piece, I don't want to have to scribble in here and color it, I can just very gently kind of rip that off. Boom. And now I could pre-paint a whole portion of this black, cut out a ton of tabs for all my things, and then just re-glue my little people and furniture on them. Okay? And that is how to approach the 2D furniture method.